Have you ever found yourself staring at a simple decision: what to eat, what to wear, whether to send that text or take that job, and felt completely paralyzed? That moment of hesitation, that quiet voice of doubt that whispers, "What if I'm wrong?" is something so many of us experience daily. We live in an age of endless options and overwhelming information, and it's slowly eroding our ability to trust ourselves. But what if the key to unshakable decisiveness wasn't about having more data or better options, but about rebuilding the very foundation of how you see yourself and the world around you? This is where an ancient philosophy, one that has guided emperors, thinkers, and leaders for centuries, offers us a way forward. Marcus Aurelius, one of history's most powerful Stoic voices, wrote in his private journal, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." That strength he speaks of isn't just about enduring hardship. It's about cultivating a deep, unbreakable self-trust that makes doubt and hesitation fade away. Stoicism teaches us that the root of indecision isn't a lack of intelligence or courage, it's a disconnection from our own internal compass. This philosophy gives us something far more valuable than quick fixes or life hacks. It offers what we might call the internal mechanics of self-trust. These are the psychological and ethical frameworks that Stoics developed not just to survive chaos, but to move through it with clarity, purpose, and conviction. Think of it as an operating system for the mind, one built on principles like virtue, reason, and emotional resilience. It's not about suppressing emotion or pretending difficulty doesn't exist. It's about training yourself to respond to life with intention rather than reacting to it with fear. And in a world that often feels designed to make us anxious, distracted, and uncertain, these tools are more relevant than ever. In this video, we're going to explore 22 of these internal mechanics, principles, and practices that Stoics use to become exceptionally decisive, even in the face of uncertainty, pressure, and unpredictability. This isn't about memorizing quotes or adopting a stiff upper lip. It's about understanding how to rewire your thinking, how to see challenges as opportunities, and how to act from a place of inner alignment rather than external validation. We'll look at how Stoics train their perception, how they focus only on what they can control, how they use reason as their guide, and how they build a resilience that doesn't depend on everything going right. This is a journey into a calmer, more confident way of moving through the world, one decision at a time. The first step to self-trust is learning to see things as they are, not as we fear or wish them to be. This is the core of the Stoic discipline of perception. It's about stripping away the layers of emotional reaction, the assumptions, and the stories we tell ourselves to get to the raw, unfiltered truth of a situation. Think of it as clearing the fog from a window. Only when the glass is clean can you see the landscape clearly and decide how to navigate it. The ancient teacher Epictetus, who was born a slave and became one of Stoicism's most influential voices, put it perfectly when he said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." He went even deeper, explaining that events themselves are neutral. They have no inherent moral value. It is our judgments, our immediate, often unconscious labels of good or bad, catastrophe or opportunity, that truly dictate our emotional and behavioral response. This is incredibly empowering because it means the quality of our experience isn't determined by external events, but by the internal lens through which we choose to view them. Consider a common modern scenario. You receive an email from your boss that simply says, "I need to speak with you at the end of the day." A mind untrained in perception might immediately spiral. It might interpret this neutral statement as a threat. The judgment is, "This is bad. I must be in trouble. What did I do wrong? Maybe they're going to let me go." This single impression, this distorted perception, can trigger a cascade of stress and anxiety that ruins your entire afternoon. Your heart races, you can't focus on your work, and you mentally rehearse defensive arguments. Now let's apply the Stoic discipline. The event itself is just a request for a conversation. That's the objective fact. The time is set for the end of the day. That is all. The Stoic approach is to withhold immediate judgment and examine the impression. They would ask, "What is within my control here?" They can control preparing for the meeting, continuing their work, and walking into that conversation with a calm and rational mind. They cannot control their boss's reasons or the outcome until they have more information. By seeing the event as neutral until proven otherwise, they conserve their mental energy and avoid self-inflicted distress. Often, the meeting is about a new project, a piece of positive feedback, or a simple administrative question. The suffering was entirely optional, created not by the event, but by the perception of it. This mental shift requires consistent practice. It's not about becoming emotionless. It's about not being hijacked by the first emotion that arises. It's the practice of creating a small space between the event and your reaction, a moment to ask, "Is this truly as I am seeing it?" This is where self-trust begins to take root. You start to trust your ability to handle reality, not the nightmare your anxiety conjures. You build a reputation with yourself as someone who is steady and clear-headed, not someone who is easily knocked off balance by every unforeseen event. Can you recall a recent situation where your initial gut reaction perception of something turned out to be completely inaccurate? Perhaps you interpreted a friend's short text message as anger, only to find out they were just busy. Maybe you saw a sudden change in your plans as a disaster, but it accidentally opened a door to a better opportunity. That gap between your first impression and the reality is where the discipline of perception lies. It's the fertile ground for building a mind that can be trusted to see clearly and therefore to decide wisely. How much time do you waste worrying about things you cannot change? This single question strikes at the heart of a fundamental human struggle, and it's precisely where the Stoics direct our attention with their second powerful principle, the dichotomy of control. This is the practice of making a clear, unwavering distinction between what is within our power and what is not. It sounds simple, almost deceptively so, but its application is where true mental freedom and self-trust are forged. The ancient Stoic teacher Epictetus, whose words have guided millions, laid this out with stunning clarity in the very first sentence of his Enchiridion, or handbook. He wrote, "Some things are within our power while others are not. Within our power are opinion, motivation, desire, aversion, and, in a word, whatever is of our own doing. Not within our power are our body, our property, our reputation, our office, and, in a word, whatever is not of our own doing." Let's break that down because it's everything. What we control, according to the Stoics, is remarkably narrow but incredibly powerful. Our judgments, our values, our intentions, our efforts, and our reactions to events. Everything else, the past, the weather, other people's opinions, traffic, the stock market, whether we get the promotion, even our own physical health to a large extent falls into the category of things not within our control. The profound insight here is that self-trust doesn't come from trying to control the uncontrollable. It withers under that impossible burden. Self-trust grows, instead, when we relentlessly focus our energy and attention solely on our own sphere of action and attitude. Every time you pour mental energy into fretting over a flight delay or agonizing over what someone thinks of you, you are essentially trying to command the ocean's tides. You are investing your most precious resource, your attention, into a venture with a guaranteed 0% return. And in the process, you are teaching your own mind that you cannot be trusted to use your energy wisely. Consider a practical, everyday example. Imagine you have spent weeks planning an important outdoor event, a family reunion, a wedding, a crucial team-building day for your company. You've handled everything within your power. You sent the invites, booked the venue, organized the food, and prepared your remarks. But as the day approaches, the forecast turns ominous, predicting thunderstorms. The untrained mind, the one that hasn't internalized the dichotomy, goes to war with reality. It spends days refreshing the weather app, feeling a knot of anxiety tighten with each update. It complains, it rages against the injustice, it mentally rehearses the disaster of a ruined day. This is a complete expenditure of energy on something utterly outside of your control. You cannot stop the rain. Now contrast this with the Stoic response. A person practicing this principle would acknowledge the forecast, accept it as a reality outside their command, and immediately pivot their focus back to their own sphere of influence. Their internal dialogue shifts. The weather is not up to me. What is up to me? I can prepare a contingency plan. I can research indoor venues as a backup. I can communicate clearly with guests about a potential change. I can choose my attitude to be flexible, resilient, and focused on the purpose of the gathering, which is connection, not sunshine. This shift is transformative. It moves you from a state of passive anxiety to one of active, empowered readiness. The event might still get rained out, but you will have met the challenge with clarity and purpose, reinforcing your trust in your own ability to handle adversity. You become the kind of person who can navigate storms, both literal and metaphorical, without being capsized by them. This practice is about more than just accepting reality. It's about discovering a profound sense of freedom within your limits. When you stop trying to command the external world, you reclaim all your power for what you truly can command, yourself. To start building this muscle right now, take a moment to bring to mind a current challenge you're facing. It could be a difficult conversation, a work project, or a personal goal. Now make 2 mental lists. First, identify just one thing about this situation that you cannot control. Then identify one thing that you absolutely can control. Your preparation, your tone of voice, your commitment to trying, your willingness to listen. That simple act of categorization is the first step toward relinquishing the burden of the uncontrollable and stepping into the power of what is yours to direct. True decisiveness springs from a character grounded in virtue. This is the third and perhaps most profound internal mechanic of Stoic self-trust. While the first 2 principles help us see the world clearly and focus our energy correctly, this one defines the very direction we should be heading. For the Stoics, virtue wasn't just about being a good person in a vague, moral sense. It was a practical, actionable framework for excellence in character, the only true good in life. They identified 4 cardinal virtues: wisdom, the ability to navigate complex situations with sound judgment; courage, the strength to act rightly even in the face of fear; justice, the commitment to fairness and the common good in our dealings with others; and temperance, the self-discipline to exercise moderation and control over our desires and impulses. When these virtues become the bedrock of your character, decision-making transforms. You are no longer deciding based on fleeting emotions, external pressures, or the uncertain pursuit of pleasure and avoidance of pain. You have an internal compass calibrated to true north that consistently points toward the right action. This eliminates a massive source of hesitation and doubt. The question is no longer, what will make me feel good or look good, but rather, what is the wise, courageous, just, and temperate thing to do here? The answer to that question, while sometimes difficult, is rarely ambiguous. It cuts through the noise and provides a clear path forward. Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher-emperor who guided Rome through war and plague, constantly reminded himself of this anchor. He wrote in his Meditations, "Just that you do the right thing, the rest doesn't matter." He expands on this, urging himself to live a life that is in accordance with nature, which for a rational human being means a life in accordance with virtue. This is the ultimate source of self-trust. You learn to trust yourself because you know your decisions are not being made by a fearful, approval-seeking, or impulsive part of you. They are being made by your highest self, the part aligned with principle and reason. Even if a decision leads to an uncomfortable outcome, disapproval from others, personal sacrifice, or short-term difficulty, you can rest in the unwavering knowledge that you acted with integrity. That knowledge is unshakable. It's a form of self-respect that no external result can ever diminish. History provides a powerful and extreme example of this principle in action, the story of Kato the Younger. In the turbulent final years of the Roman Republic, Cato found himself opposed to the rising power of Julius Caesar. For Cato, Caesar represented a direct threat to the Republic and the rule of law, the very essence of justice. When civil war broke out, Cato chose to side with Pompey, not because he liked him, but because he saw it as the only principled stand against tyranny. Even after Pompey's defeat, Cato refused to surrender or seek a pardon from Caesar. To do so would be to legitimize a dictator and betray his lifelong commitment to the Republic. His values were not negotiable. Knowing capture was imminent, he chose to take his own life rather than be used as a political pawn by a man he believed had destroyed Roman liberty. Now, this is an intense example, and Stoicism isn't about advocating for such drastic measures, but it perfectly illustrates the point. Cato's decision, while tragic, was not born from hesitation or doubt. It flowed directly from a character so firmly grounded in virtue, specifically justice and courage, that the choice was almost inevitable. He trusted his principles more than he feared death or desired comfort. His self-trust was absolute because it was built on the unshakable foundation of his character. You and I will likely never face a decision of that magnitude, but the mechanics are identical. Every day, we face smaller choices that either reinforce or erode our self-trust. Choosing to speak up in a meeting when you see an unfairness, even if your voice shakes, that is justice and courage. Opting to do thorough research instead of taking a shortcut on an important project, that is wisdom. Walking away from a gossip session or turning down that third drink when you know you've had enough, that is temperance. Each time you make a decision aligned with virtue, you send a powerful message to yourself. I am someone who can be trusted to do the right thing. This builds a reservoir of inner confidence that makes future decisions easier and more decisive. Think back on a decision you made recently, big or small. It could be anything from a work project to a conversation with a loved one. Now hold it up to the light of these 4 virtues. Ask yourself, was that decision wise? Was it courageous? Was it just and fair to everyone involved? Did it demonstrate self-control? Your honest answers to these questions will tell you everything you need to know about whether that choice was building up your internal trust or quietly chipping away at it. What if our relentless pursuit of comfort is actually the very thing that erodes our ability to make clear decisions when life gets hard? This is the counterintuitive heart of the 4th Stoic principle, embracing voluntary discomfort. In a culture that often equates a good life with an easy one, the Stoics proposed a radically different path. They believed that by intentionally and periodically stepping into slight hardship, we inoculate ourselves against the shock of unforeseen adversity. It's a form of mental vaccination. By choosing to be cold, hungry, or tired in a controlled, safe environment, we build a deep-seated confidence in our own capacity to endure. This confidence is the bedrock of decisiveness in a crisis. When you know from first-hand experience that you can handle discomfort, the fear of potential future hardship loses its power to paralyze you. You stop avoiding difficult conversations, challenging projects, or bold moves simply because they might be uncomfortable. You trust in your own resilience. The Roman philosopher Seneca, a towering figure in Stoicism who advised Emperor Nero and witnessed immense luxury, was a powerful advocate for this practice. He didn't just talk about it, he lived it. He would deliberately set aside days to practice poverty. He wrote, "Set aside a certain number of days, during which you shall be content with the scantiest and cheapest fare, with coarse and rough dress, saying to yourself the while, 'Is this the condition that I feared?'" This exercise wasn't about self-punishment or asceticism for its own sake. It was a practical drill for the soul. By voluntarily experiencing lack, he reaffirmed his understanding that his well-being was not dependent on external comforts. He was strengthening his inner citadel, proving to himself that he could be content and in command of his faculties even when his circumstances were less than ideal. This knowledge is incredibly liberating. It means your sense of self and your ability to act are no longer held hostage by your surroundings. We can integrate this ancient wisdom into our modern lives in surprisingly simple yet powerful ways. The morning cold shower is a classic modern parallel. Choosing to step into that initial shock of cold water is a tiny, daily victory over your desire for immediate comfort. It's a physical reminder that you are in charge of your reactions. You consciously decide to endure the discomfort, and within moments, you experience your body and mind adapting, proving that you are stronger than the impulse to avoid it. Similarly, intermittent fasting, or simply skipping a meal voluntarily, isn't just about physical health. It's an exercise in mastering your appetites and recognizing that you can function perfectly well, often with even greater mental clarity without constant satiation. Even something as simple as taking the stairs instead of the elevator, or walking somewhere instead of driving, can be a microdose of voluntary discomfort that reinforces your self-reliance. Each small act is a vote for your own resilience, building a cumulative trust that you can handle much larger challenges when they inevitably arise. This practice directly attacks indecision at its root. Often we hesitate because we are subconsciously afraid of the discomfort a decision might bring: the awkward conversation, the extra work, the potential failure. By making yourself familiar and comfortable with discomfort itself, you remove that hidden barrier. You become the kind of person who can make the tough call because you're not afraid of the feelings or effort that might follow. To start building this crucial layer of self-trust this week, take a moment for a quick audit of your daily comforts. Identify one small, harmless comfort you could voluntarily give up for a short period. It doesn't have to be dramatic. Maybe it's swapping your sugary breakfast for something simpler, turning off the streaming services for one night and sitting with your own thoughts, or leaving your phone behind during a walk. The specific act matters less than the intention behind it. The conscious choice to prove to yourself that ease is optional and that your power remains intact without it. How would your decisions change if you were prepared for any outcome? This isn't about pessimism. It's about a profound psychological exercise the Stoics called Premeditation Malorum, the Premeditation of Evils. This fifth internal mechanic flips our natural anxiety on its head. Instead of trying to avoid thinking about bad things happening, which only makes those fears grow larger in the shadows of our minds, the Stoics advise us to deliberately and rationally bring them into the light. By consciously visualizing the worst-case scenario in vivid detail, we accomplish something remarkable. We disarm it. we move from a state of fearful anticipation to one of pragmatic readiness. The unknown is always more terrifying than the known. When you've already walked through the potential disaster in your mind and identified how you would respond, you strip it of its power to shock and paralyze you. This practice doesn't create anxiety. It systematically dissolves it by replacing vague dread with concrete contingency plans. Seneca, who faced exile, financial ruin, and ultimately a death sentence from his own student, understood this better than most. He wrote powerfully about this idea, stating, "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality." He advised his friend Lucilius to regularly contemplate potential misfortunes, not to dwell on misery, but to build a fortress of calm within. He suggested he robs present ills of their power who has perceived their coming beforehand. That last phrase is the key, perception beforehand. By pre-living a difficulty, you are no longer ambushed by it. Your nervous system doesn't go into full-scale panic because the event feels familiar, even if it's happening for the first time. You've already rehearsed your response. This creates a deep-seated equanimity that is the absolute opposite of indecision. When you know you can handle the worst, you are free to calmly pursue the best. Let's make this practical with a scenario everyone can relate to: preparing for a high-stakes job interview. The typical approach is to focus solely on success, visualizing a perfect performance, hoping for the offer, dreaming about the new role. But this single-minded focus makes the possibility of rejection a terrifying specter. If your entire mental and emotional investment is in one positive outcome, a rejection feels like a personal catastrophe. Now apply the Stoic practice of negative visualization. Before the interview, you would set aside time to seriously contemplate not getting the job. You wouldn't just briefly acknowledge it, you'd walk through it. You'd imagine opening the polite rejection email. You'd feel that initial sting of disappointment. And then, crucially, you'd follow the thread all the way through to your Stoic response. You'd remind yourself that your worth is not determined by any single employer's decision. It's determined by your character and your efforts, which are within your control. You'd consider what you learned from the interview process itself. You'd plan your next steps, thanking the interviewer for their time, continuing your search, perhaps even identifying a skill gap to work on. By doing this mental rehearsal, you accomplish two things. First, you drastically reduce the anxiety of the interview itself because the feared outcome has lost its fangs. You're not desperate, you're composed and clear-headed, which actually increases your chances of performing well. Second, if the rejection does come, it's not a devastating blow. It's a scenario you've already navigated in your mind, and you have a pre-built framework for handling it with resilience and grace. This mental exercise is a training ground for building unwavering self-trust. It proves to you over and over that you are not fragile. You can withstand setbacks and recalibrate. To integrate this powerful tool into your own life, bring to mind a situation that's causing you some anxiety right now. Perhaps a difficult conversation you need to have, a financial decision, or a creative project you're afraid might fail. Now give yourself permission to mentally walk through the absolute worst-case outcome. Don't shy away from the details. Then pause and ask yourself the most important question: what would my Stoic response be? How would you apply the principles of perception, the dichotomy of control, and virtue to navigate that outcome? How would you learn from it? How would you continue to move forward? By identifying that response now, you are not inviting failure. You are building an inner resilience that allows you to approach any decision with greater courage, clarity, and confidence. Decisiveness flows naturally when we stop resisting reality. This is the essence of the sixth Stoic principle, living in accordance with nature. At first glance, this phrase might sound abstract or even a little mystical. but for the Stoics, it was the most practical and grounding concept of all. To live in accordance with nature means to align your actions with two interconnected things: your own rational human nature and the greater, unfolding flow of the world around you. It is the practice of accepting what is true and real in any given moment, and then using your faculty of reason, your highest human gift, to choose the most virtuous and adaptive response. This is the opposite of stubbornness, wishful thinking, or forcing your will upon a universe that simply won't comply. It is about becoming like a skilled sailor. The sailor cannot control the wind or the waves, that's the nature of the sea, but they can absolutely control the set of their sails. They work with the conditions, not against them, to navigate expertly toward their destination. When you stop wasting energy railing against the wind and start focusing on adjusting your sails, your path forward becomes clear and your decisions become fluid and effective. Marcus Aurelius constantly returned to this idea as a source of strength and clarity. He wrote to himself, "Accept the present in its entirety. Nature's will is that nothing should stand against or obstruct another, but that everything should work together to compose the whole." This isn't a call for passive resignation, it's a strategy for empowered action. He's reminding himself that frustration and indecision arise when his personal will clashes with the inevitable flow of events. The solution is to harmonize with that flow, to see himself as a cooperative part of a larger whole, and to find his purpose within that context. When you embrace this mindset, you stop seeing obstacles as malicious forces set against you and start seeing them as simply part of the terrain to be navigated. This shift is incredibly liberating. It transforms your relationship with reality from one of constant conflict to one of dynamic partnership. Consider a modern scenario we've all experienced. You have a meticulously planned Saturday. You've booked tickets for a special event, made reservations at a restaurant, and are looking forward to a perfect day out. Then you wake up to a torrential downpour and immediate notifications that the outdoor event has been cancelled. The typical, untrained reaction is one of resistance. You feel frustration, disappointment, even anger. You might complain about the weather, lament your ruined plans, and spend the morning in a funk, mentally attached to the day that should have been. This is the energy of resistance, and it leads directly to indecision. You're stuck because you're trying to force a reality that no longer exists. Now, apply the principle of living in accordance with nature. The nature of the weather is to change. The nature of outdoor events is that they are sometimes cancelled. This is the reality of the situation. Acceptance is the first step. You acknowledge the disappointment without letting it define your day. Then you engage your reason. Given that this is the new reality, what is the best, most virtuous way to spend this suddenly free day? Perhaps it's an opportunity to finally dive into that book you've been meaning to read, creating a cozy, indoor sanctuary. Maybe it's a chance to call a friend you haven't spoken to in ages and have a long, meaningful conversation. It could even be a prompt to get creative and plan a fun indoor adventure with your family that you'd never considered before. By accepting the change and adapting to it, you often discover alternatives that are just as rewarding, if not more so, than the original plan. The obstacle, in this case the rain, literally becomes the way to a different but equally valuable experience. This principle asks us to examine all the areas of our lives where we might be stiff-arming reality instead of dancing with it. Are you resisting unnecessary career change because you're clinging to an outdated idea of what your path should look like? Are you struggling in a relationship because you're trying to change the other person rather than accepting who they are and adapting your interactions accordingly? This constant resistance creates immense internal friction, which manifests as stress, anxiety, and that familiar feeling of being stuck. To live in accordance with nature is to release that pressure, to stop trying to swim against the current and to instead use its energy to guide you. It's about finding the most rational, virtuous, and effective way to move within the world as it actually is, not as you wish it would be. Take a moment to look at a current challenge in your own life. Where are you perhaps resisting reality instead of accepting it? Is there a circumstance you're trying to fight against that, if you simply accepted it as the new starting point, would free up your energy to find a brilliant and adaptive solution? The moment you stop arguing with what is, you unlock a profound capacity for clear, decisive, and effective action. The space between stimulus and response is where self-trust is built. This tiny, often overlooked gap is the entire theater of Stoic practice, the critical moment where we either surrender to our automatic impulses or assert our sovereignty as rational beings. It's in this pause that we reclaim our power, moving from a state of reaction to one of deliberate, reasoned action. The ancient Stoics understood that our first impression of any event, the initial jolt of anger, the flash of fear, the surge of desire, is not a command. It is merely a suggestion, an invitation from our more primitive mind to react in a certain way. The practice, the art, is to withhold our immediate assent to that invitation. We take a breath, we create a sliver of distance, and in that quiet moment, we ask our rational mind to examine the impression before we decide whether it deserves our belief and, ultimately, our behavior. Epictetus, with his characteristic clarity, gave us the precise instruction manual for this practice. He taught, "Don't let the force of an impression when it first hits you knock you off your feet. Just say to it, 'Hold on a moment, let me see who you are and what you represent.' Let me put you to the test." This is the essence of the thoughtful pause. It's not about suppressing emotion or becoming cold and unfeeling. It is about inserting a moment of conscious choice between the trigger and the action. It is the difference between being a puppet whose strings are pulled by every external event and being the puppeteer who holds the strings themselves. Every time we successfully create this pause, we are doing a rep for our mental resilience. We are strengthening the neural pathways of self-control and reinforcing the most fundamental layer of self-trust, the trust that we will not be hijacked by our own passions. Consider a scenario that unfolds in countless homes and workplaces every day, a heated argument. Your partner or a colleague says something that feels like a personal attack. The stimulus is their words, and your body's immediate biological response is a surge of adrenaline. Your heart rate jumps, your muscles tense, and your mind instantly generates a devastatingly sharp retort. The untrained, impulsive path is to immediately fire that verbal bullet. You react to their reaction, and the conflict escalates into a destructive cycle of hurt feelings and damaged trust. Now apply the Stoic art of the pause. The moment you feel that physiological jolt, you consciously decide to stop. You might even literally take a slow, deep breath. In that suspended second, you apply Epictetus's test. You examine the impression. Is this truly an attack, or could they be speaking from a place of their own stress or misunderstanding? What is the virtuous response here? Would a harsh retort be courageous, or would patient understanding be wiser? This brief interrogation of your own initial impression allows your higher reasoning to take the wheel. From this calmer place, you can choose a response that aligns with your values. Perhaps you say, "I want to understand what you're saying, but the way you said that felt hurtful. Can we talk about what's really going on?" This single pause has the power to de-escalate the entire situation, transforming a potential battle into an opportunity for deeper connection and resolution. This skill is like a mental muscle that must be developed through consistent practice. It starts with the small, everyday moments, pausing for 3 seconds before grabbing your phone when you feel a pang of boredom. Taking a breath before responding to a frustrating email. Stopping to think before making an impulsive purchase driven by a fleeting desire. Each time you succeed, you deposit a little more trust into your internal bank. You prove to yourself that you are not a slave to your impulses. When a truly major decision or crisis eventually arises, that pause will already be an ingrained habit, a sanctuary of calm within the storm that allows you to access your clearest thinking and your most principled action. Can you recall a specific time in your own life when inserting even a tiny pause completely changed the outcome of a situation? Perhaps it was stopping yourself from sending an angry text and later being grateful you did when you discovered more context. Maybe it was taking a moment to think before offering criticism, allowing you to phrase it in a way that was constructive instead of damaging. That powerful space, however brief, is where your character is ultimately forged. It is the difference between a life of regretful reactions and a life of chosen responses. How can you trust yourself if you don't truly know yourself? This penetrating question leads us directly to the eighth and deeply transformative Stoic practice, the daily discipline of self-examination. This isn't about self-criticism or harsh judgment. It's about developing an honest, curious, and compassionate relationship with your own mind. It is the process of turning the lens of perception inward to observe your own judgments, actions, and reactions with the same objective clarity you'd use to examine an external event. The Stoics believed that a life without introspection is a life lived on autopilot, driven by unconscious habits and unchallenged impulses. To build genuine self-trust, you must first become a reliable witness to your own life. You need to know your triggers, recognize your patterns, and understand the gap between your professed values and your actual behavior. This nightly audit is how you close that gap, aligning your actions more closely with your ideals each day, and in doing so, building a self that is increasingly worthy of your own trust. The Roman philosopher Seneca, a master of this introspective practice, laid out a powerful template for this evening ritual in his essay on anger. He advised, "When the light has been removed and my wife has fallen silent, aware of this habit that's now become mine, I examine my entire day and go back over what I've done and said, hiding nothing from myself, passing nothing by." He would then ask himself pointed questions. What bad habit have you cured today? What fault have you resisted? In what respect are you better? This is the essence of the practice. It's a quiet, private conference with yourself at the end of each day, not to dwell on mistakes with regret, but to learn from them with the cool detachment of a scientist studying data. The goal is to identify where you were driven by passion instead of reason, where you might have strayed from the virtues, and to strategize how you can course correct tomorrow. This process of honest accounting is what allows for genuine growth. It transforms vague feelings of unease or dissatisfaction into specific, actionable insights. Imagine incorporating a modern, practical version of this ritual into your own life. The day is done, you've turned off the screens, and the house is quiet. You take just 5 minutes with a notebook or simply in quiet reflection. You don't need to write an essay, you're just gathering data. You might ask yourself 3 simple questions derived from Seneca's wisdom. First, where did my actions today align with my values? This isn't about grand gestures. It could be as simple as showing patience in a long line, choosing to listen instead of interrupt in a meeting, or completing a task with diligence. Acknowledging these small victories reinforces positive behavior and builds self-esteem. The second question is, where did I fall short of the person I want to be? Again, be specific and compassionate. Perhaps you snapped at a loved one out of stress, procrastinated on an important project, or assented to a negative impression about a colleague without examining it. The key is to observe this without self-flagellation. See it as a learning point, not a failure. The third and most important question is, what is one small step I can take tomorrow to do better? This shifts the focus from judgment to proactive improvement. Maybe it's committing to a 5-minute breathing exercise before checking your phone in the morning, or setting an intention to ask one more clarifying question before reacting in a discussion. This entire process takes mere minutes, but its cumulative effect is profound. It turns each day into a deliberate practice session for living a more virtuous life. This practice of self-examination is the ultimate feedback loop for personal development. Without it, we tend to repeat the same patterns indefinitely, wondering why we keep ending up in the same frustrating situations. With it, we become active architects of our own character. We start to notice that we always get irritable when we're hungry, that we tend to avoid difficult conversations out of a fear of conflict, or that we feel most content on days when we've been of service to others. This self-knowledge is incredibly empowering. It allows you to anticipate your own reactions and put safeguards in place. It helps you identify your strengths and lean into them. Most importantly, it builds a deep and authentic self-trust because you are consistently demonstrating to yourself that you are paying attention. You are taking responsibility. You are committed to your own growth. This isn't a practice of perfection. It's a practice of awareness, and it is in that unwavering awareness that true decisiveness is born. You can make clear choices because you know your own mind, you understand your own values, and you have a proven system for learning from every outcome, good or bad. Tonight, before you sleep, why not give this ancient tool a try? Set a timer for 5 minutes and ask yourself those 3 simple questions. You might be surprised by what you learn about the person you are, and you will undoubtedly take a concrete step toward becoming the person you trust. Your control ends with your action, not the outcome. This single sentence captures the essence of the 9th Stoic principle, a profound shift in focus that can dissolve the anxiety and hesitation that so often surrounds our biggest decisions. The Stoics drew a bright, unwavering line between the internal world of our intentions, efforts, and choices, which is our sovereign territory, and the external world of results, other people's opinions, and luck, which is not. When we blur this line, when we emotionally tether our sense of success and self-worth to things we cannot command, we hand over the keys to our inner peace and decisiveness. We become like a gardener who carefully tills the soil, plants the finest seeds, waters them diligently, and then spends every day in a state of anguish because they cannot force the sun to shine or the rain to fall at precisely the right moment. The wise gardener understands that their job is excellence in the process. The ultimate yield is influenced by a million factors beyond their control. This mindset doesn't lead to apathy. It generates a tremendous courage to act because the fear of a bad outcome can no longer stop you. You are freed to pour your entire being into your effort, knowing that a virtuous attempt is a success in itself, regardless of the final score. Epictetus, who dedicated his life to teaching this precise form of mental freedom, put it in the clearest possible terms. He said, "Make the best use of what is in your power and take the rest as it happens." This is the core of detachment from external outcomes. It is not a cold, uncaring detachment from the world. It is a warm, passionate, and full-hearted engagement with the one thing you can truly influence, your own conduct in the present moment. When you internalize this, your motivation shifts from being extrinsic, driven by the desire for a specific reward or the avoidance of a specific failure, to being intrinsic, driven by the integrity of the action itself. You act because it is the right thing to do, because it aligns with your character, because the effort itself is meaningful. This is where you find an unshakable foundation for self-trust. You learn to trust yourself not because you always win, but because you always give your best. You become someone who can be relied upon to show up with full commitment, no matter how uncertain the situation. Consider the example of an elite athlete, perhaps a gymnast preparing for the Olympics. For years, their life has been a monument to discipline. They control their diet, their training schedule, their sleep, and their mental preparation with incredible precision. They can control the quality of their practice routines down to the angle of their fingers. On the day of the final, they step onto the mat. They can control their focus, their breathing, and their execution of the routine they have performed thousands of times. But they cannot control the judge sitting at the sidelines. They cannot control the performance of their competitors, which might be even more brilliant on that day. They cannot control a sudden gust of wind or a tiny imperfection in the equipment that might go unnoticed by everyone but them. The athlete who is attached to the outcome, the gold medal, has placed their entire sense of self-worth and validation into the hands of those external factors. If they win, they are euphoric. If they lose, they are devastated, and all that disciplined effort feels worthless. This is a fragile way to live. Now consider the Stoic athlete. Their goal is not the medal. Their goal is to perform the most perfect, courageous, and technically excellent routine of which they are capable in this moment. They detach from the score before they even begin. They step onto the mat with a single intention: to execute their art with virtue. Whether they score a 9.8 or a 10.0, whether they stand on the podium or not, they can walk away with their head held high. They achieved their true goal, which was entirely within their power. This mindset doesn't just reduce the paralyzing pressure of competition. It often leads to a better performance because the mind is free, focused, and not choked by fear. This principle applies directly to the decisions we freeze over in our own lives. We hesitate to apply for the dream job because we're attached to the outcome of getting it, terrified of the rejection letter. We avoid asking someone on a date because we're attached to them saying yes, dreading the potential no. We procrastinate on starting a creative project because we're attached to it being a masterpiece, fearing it might be mediocre. In every case, the fixation on the uncontrollable outcome is what creates the paralysis. The Stoic solution is to perform a mental pivot, redirect your attention and your valuation solely to the effort. Your job is not to get the job. Your job is to write the most authentic and compelling cover letter you can. Your job is not to secure the date. Your job is to be courageous and kind in extending the invitation. Your job is not to create a masterpiece. Your job is to show up at the canvas and put your honest effort into the first brushstroke. When you make this shift, the weight lifts. The decision becomes easy because the only thing at stake is your own integrity, which is always within your reach. Think about a goal you are currently working toward or considering. It could be a fitness target, a financial aim, or a personal project. Now, consciously try to separate the two components. Clearly identify the part that is your effort, the actions, the discipline, the intention which is yours to command. Then acknowledge the part that is the outcome, the final result, the recognition, the external validation which is not. Can you feel the sense of relief that comes from giving yourself permission to fully own the first part and release the second? This is the liberating practice of detachment, and it is the key to acting with boldness in an uncertain world. The Stoic mind is like still water, undisturbed by life's ripples. This isn't a state of numbness or apathy. It is a profound and cultivated inner stability known as equanimity. Think of it as the ultimate mental equilibrium, a steady calm that remains unshaken whether fortune brings a windfall or a disaster. For the Stoics, this wasn't a lofty ideal but a practical necessity for clear thinking and decisive action. When your emotional state is tossed around by every piece of good news or bad, your ability to make sound judgments is compromised. You become reactive, swayed by the temporary high of success or the crushing weight of failure. Equanimity is the anchor that holds you fast in the center of the storm, allowing you to perceive events with clarity and choose your responses with wisdom rather than whim. It is the bedrock upon which reliable self-trust is built, because you know that your judgment won't be clouded by the emotional weather of the moment. Marcus Aurelius, who faced immense political pressures, personal loss, and the burdens of leading an empire, constantly returned to this theme in his private writings. He offered himself this powerful reminder: you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. If you are pained by any external thing, it is not this thing that disturbs you, but your own judgment about it. And it is in your power to wipe out that judgment now. This quote gets to the very heart of Stoic equanimity. The disturbance isn't in the event itself. It is in our assent to the initial emotional impression that the event creates. The practice of equanimity is the practice of withholding that immediate assent. It is recognizing the emotional wave as it forms, the surge of excitement, the pang of fear, and choosing not to be swept away by it. Instead, you observe it, you acknowledge its presence, and you then decide from a place of reason how much weight to give it. This creates a crucial distance between the event and your reaction, a space where your truest, most rational self can remain in command. Imagine a scenario that could easily throw anyone off balance. You receive a phone call from a family member with sudden, urgent news. Perhaps it is incredibly positive. You've just received a large, unexpected inheritance from a distant relative. Alternatively, the news could be devastating. A close friend has been in a serious accident. The initial, raw emotional reaction to either piece of news is natural and human. The Stoic practice isn't to suppress that initial gasp of joy or shudder of fear. It is about what happens in the very next moment. The person who has cultivated equanimity will feel that initial jolt, but they will then take a conscious breath. They will create a pause instead of immediately being carried into a frenzy of celebratory planning or a spiral of catastrophic thinking. They will turn inward. They might silently ask themselves the Stoic questions: what is within my control here, my actions and my judgments? What is not within my control, the event itself and its ultimate outcome? This momentary pause allows the emotional turbulence to settle just enough for clear thinking to emerge. From this calmer center, they can then determine the most virtuous and effective response. In the case of good news, it prevents impulsive decisions and encourages thoughtful gratitude. In the face of bad news, it prevents paralyzing panic and enables compassionate, focused action. The event doesn't cease to be significant, but your stability in navigating it becomes the most significant thing of all. This level of composure might seem superhuman, but it is a skill developed through daily, micro practices. It begins with noticing your emotional reactions without immediately identifying with them. It's the difference between thinking, "I am angry," and observing, "I am experiencing a feeling of anger." That slight shift in language creates the psychological distance needed for equanimity to grow. Today, as you move through your experiences, make it a gentle practice to simply notice your emotional weather patterns. When you feel a spike of frustration in traffic, or a flutter of anxiety before a meeting, or a burst of pride after a compliment, try not to grab onto it or push it away. Just acknowledge its presence. See if you can name the emotion without letting it name you. This act of mindful observation is the first and most powerful step toward building a mind that remains your own, regardless of what life brings. It is how you train yourself to be the deep, still water and not the ripples dancing on its surface. You are the gatekeeper of your own mind. This isn't a metaphor, it's a literal description of one of the most powerful psychological tools in the Stoic arsenal, the practice of assent. Every moment of every day, our senses are bombarded with impressions. A critical comment from a colleague, a flashy advertisement, a sudden noise in the night. Each of these events generates an immediate, automatic impression in our mind, an initial interpretation that carries an emotional charge. The untrained mind makes a critical error here. It treats these first impressions as commands, as undeniable truths that must be obeyed. It hears the criticism and immediately believes, I am a failure. It sees the advertisement and feels, I need that to be happy. The Stoic revolution is the realization that this entire process is not automatic. Between the external event and your emotional and behavioral reaction, there is a hidden, pivotal moment of choice. This is the moment of assent, the conscious act of either granting your agreement to that initial impression or withholding it. You are not your first thoughts. You are the judge who decides which of those thoughts are worthy of your belief. Epictetus, the philosopher who turned this concept into a practical discipline, gave us the precise instruction manual. He said, don't let the force of an impression when it first hits you knock you off your feet. Just say to it, hold on a moment, let me see who you are and what you represent. Let me put you to the test. This is the essence of the power of assent. It is the mental equivalent of a security checkpoint. Every impression that arrives at the gates of your mind must be stopped, questioned, and examined before it is allowed to enter and influence your state of being. Is this impression accurate? Is it helpful? Is it based on fact or on a distorted fear or desire? By creating this tiny space for examination, you shatter the chain of automatic reactivity. You move from being a passive recipient of your thoughts to being an active curator of your mind. This is the very source of mental freedom and the foundation of unwavering self-trust. You learn to trust yourself because you know you will not be hijacked by every passing mental weather pattern. Consider a common situation where this power can completely change the outcome. Imagine you present a project idea at work and a coworker immediately responds with, "That's never going to work. It's far too ambitious for our timeline." The initial, raw impression that hits your mind might be one of deflation, embarrassment, even shame. The automatic, untrained reaction is to assent immediately to this impression. You internalize the criticism, believe the narrative that your idea is bad, and you either shut down or respond defensively. This assent triggers a cascade of stress and self-doubt. Now apply the Stoic practice. The comment is the external event. The initial feeling of deflation is the impression. This is where you insert the pause. You become the gatekeeper. You examine the impression. You ask Epictetus's questions. Hold on. Is this comment an objective truth about my idea? Or is it simply one person's opinion, potentially colored by their own stress or risk aversion? What parts of this are within my control? I can control clarifying the timeline. I can control presenting more data to support the plan. I cannot control my colleague's initial reaction. By withholding your immediate assent to the negative impression, you prevent it from becoming a belief. From this place of calm examination, you can now choose a rational, virtuous response. Perhaps you say, "I appreciate the feedback on the timeline. Could you help me understand your specific concerns so we can address them?" This response, born from conscious choice rather than reactive emotion, is more likely to lead to a productive conversation and demonstrates leadership and poise. The criticism didn't disappear, but your assent to its destructive power did. This practice requires vigilant awareness, as we often assent to impressions without even realizing it. We assent to the impression that a rainy day is ruining our plans. We assent to the impression that a stranger's frown is a sign of their disapproval of us. We assent to the impression that a minor mistake is a catastrophic failure. Each unexamined assent gives away a little more of our mental sovereignty. To reclaim it, take a moment to look back over the last day or two. Can you identify one instance where you automatically assented to an impression that later caused you unnecessary distress or led to a reaction you regretted? Perhaps it was the impression that a loved one's distracted tone meant they were angry with you, sending you into a spiral of anxiety. Maybe it was the impression from social media that everyone else is more successful, triggering feelings of inadequacy. Simply bringing this moment into your awareness begins the process of change. It reminds you that you have a choice. You are the gatekeeper, and every impression must now present its credentials before it is allowed to shape your reality. Indecision is a slow thief of time. It doesn't announce its arrival with a dramatic event. It simply lingers in the background of our days, siphoning away our most precious and non-renewable resource, moment by moment, opportunity by opportunity, until we look up one day and wonder where it all went. The Stoics understood this deeply, and they weaponized this awareness into a powerful motivator for decisive action. This principle isn't about frantic busyness or cramming every second with productivity. It is about the profound recognition that time is the raw material of life itself, and how we choose to spend it or waste it is the ultimate measure of our existence. Every moment spent hesitating, deliberating endlessly, or postponing action is a moment that is gone forever, a tiny death of potential. The Stoic practice of Memento Mori, remembering that you must die, is not a morbid fixation. It is the ultimate clarifier. It is the tool that cuts through the fog of trivial concerns and forces us to confront the most urgent question. If my time is limited, what is truly worthy of it? Seneca, in his brilliant and piercing essay on the shortness of life, lays bare this human folly with stunning precision. He observes that life is long enough if you know how to use it, but most people are profoundly wasteful with it. He writes, "You are living as if destined to live forever. Your own frailty never occurs to you. You don't notice how much time has already passed, but squander it as though you had a full and overflowing supply." He goes on to compare such a life to a vessel with a hole in the bottom. No matter how much you pour in, it never fills. We pour our time into the pursuits of others, into petty anxieties, into the pursuit of wealth and status that ultimately provides no lasting satisfaction, all while the things that truly matter to us, our deepest relationships, our personal growth, our cherished creative projects, are perpetually placed on a shelf for a tomorrow that is never guaranteed. For Seneca, the greatest waste of time was not inaction, but misplaced action, spending our limited days on things that are not aligned with our true nature and values. Consider the modern-day parallel of someone who dreams of writing a novel. They have the idea, they feel the passion for it, they may even talk about it at parties. But they are trapped in a cycle of indecision. They can't decide on the perfect opening line. They worry the plot isn't original enough. They tell themselves they'll start when they have a full month of free time. So they procrastinate. They spend their evenings scrolling through social media, watching another episode of a show, or researching the right way to write a book. All activities that feel vaguely productive but are ultimately just ways to avoid the vulnerability of actually creating. Days turn into weeks, weeks into months, and years into a decade. The blank page remains blank. Their story remains untold. This is indecision as the thief. It hasn't just stolen time, it has stolen a piece of their potential identity. Now, contrast this with the Stoic approach. A person who has internalized the value of time and the practice of memento mori would see this differently. They would acknowledge the fear and the potential for failure, but they would weigh it against the certain failure of never trying at all. They would break the monumental task of write a novel into the smallest possible immediate action. They would commit to writing one paragraph today, just one, not a chapter, not a page, a single paragraph. This immediate action, however small, is a decisive victory over procrastination. It is a way to honor the preciousness of the present moment by investing it in something meaningful. They understand that a novel is not written in a month of free time. It is written one sentence at a time, in the stolen moments between other responsibilities. This shift from grand, paralyzing intention to small, immediate action is how we reclaim our time from the thief of indecision. This practice forces a radical prioritization. It asks us to constantly evaluate whether our current use of time aligns with what we would do if we knew our days were numbered. To truly bring this principle into your own life, try this thought experiment, one the Stoics would have endorsed wholeheartedly. If a trusted physician sat you down today and told you with absolute certainty that you had only 6 months left to live, what would change? Not what would you do in a final, dramatic burst like skydiving or quitting your job, but what would you stop doing? What conversations would you finally have? What grudges would you immediately release? What unimportant tasks would you instantly delegate or discard? What project, long languishing in the back of your mind, would you finally grant yourself permission to begin, even imperfectly? The answers to these questions are a direct map to your deepest values. They reveal the gap between how you are currently spending your time and how you wish you were spending it. The goal isn't to live every day in a state of morbid emergency, but to use this clarity to begin closing that gap right now. To start making choices, however small, that steer the ship of your life back in the direction of what you truly deem meaningful. Because the truth that the Stoics want us to remember is that we are all, in fact, under that exact same sentence. Our time is finite. The only unknown is the number of days remaining. Indecision is the thief that robs us of them. Purposeful action is how we take them back. Are your choices truly yours, or are they simply reactions to the people and pressures around you? This is the critical question at the heart of the 13th Stoic principle, acting with intentionality. In a world filled with endless distractions, social expectations, and marketing messages designed to shape our desires, it is remarkably easy to live a life on autopilot. We adopt goals because they seem impressive, we buy things because everyone else has them, and we choose paths because they are well-trodden and safe. The Stoics identified this as a fundamental betrayal of our rational nature. To act with intentionality is to reclaim authorship of your own life. It means pausing before you act to ask a simple but profound question. Why am I pursuing this goal? Why am I buying this product? Why am I spending my time in this way? The answer must be rooted in your own reasoned purpose and aligned with your core values, not in the fleeting whims of popular opinion or the fear of missing out. This deliberate clarity is what forges unshakable self-trust. When you know that your actions are consciously chosen and not unconsciously adopted, you build a deep and lasting confidence in your own judgment. Marcus Aurelius provided a powerful mental tool to cultivate this sense of purpose in every single action. He advised himself, when you are about to undertake a task, remind yourself what sort of task it is. He goes even further, suggesting we bring a profound gravity to our actions by asking, what is the nature of this thing I am about to do? And to do everything as if it were the last action of your life. This isn't a call to live in a state of morbid fear, but to inject the highest level of care and attention into the present moment. If you truly believed this conversation, this email, this walk to the store, or this meal you are preparing might be your final act, how would you change your approach? You would likely do it with more presence, more integrity, and more reverence. You would ensure that your action was a perfect reflection of your character, leaving no room for carelessness or half-hearted effort. This mindset elevates the mundane into the meaningful and ensures that every action, no matter how small, is infused with a sense of deliberate purpose. It is the ultimate antidote to a life lived by accident. Consider the profound difference this makes when applied to one of life's biggest decisions, choosing a career path. The external pressures can be immense. Family might expect you to join a traditional profession. Society might loudly tout the prestige and financial rewards of certain tech or finance roles. Social media floods us with images of a specific kind of entrepreneurial success. The path of least resistance is to simply follow the noise, to chase the title, the salary, and the external validation. Now imagine someone applying Stoic intentionality to this crossroad. They begin by tuning out the external chorus and turning inward. They ask themselves the Marcus Aurelius questions, but tailored to their life. What is the nature of the work I am about to choose? Does it align with my core virtues? Does it allow me to exercise wisdom, justice, courage, and temperance? Does it contribute to the common good, or does it merely serve my ego? Their decision is no longer about what job can I get, but what kind of life do I want to build, and what work will be a meaningful expression of who I am. They might choose to become a teacher despite lower pay because it aligns with their value of service and justice. They might opt for a skilled trade because it satisfies their desire for tangible, honest work and allows them to be fully present and engaged. The specific choice is less important than the process behind it. The decision is now theirs consciously, courageously, and intentionally chosen. This creates a bedrock of self-trust that no future career setback can easily shake because the choice wasn't based on a fragile trend. It was built on the solid foundation of self-knowledge. This practice of intentionality isn't reserved for life's major milestones. It is most powerfully built through our daily habits. Our routines often operate in the background, running on autopilot and silently shaping our character over time. A single evening spent mindlessly scrolling through a social media feed is a minor thing. But when that action is repeated night after night without conscious choice, it gradually shapes a mind that is distracted, anxious, and passive. The habit was never chosen, it was simply acquired by default. To reclaim your intentionality, start small. Pick one daily habit. Your morning coffee ritual, your commute, your lunch break, your evening wind-down routine. For just one day, bring the full light of your attention to it. Ask yourself, why do I do this? Does this habit serve my larger goals and values? Does it strengthen me or deplete me? Is this how I would choose to spend this moment if I were acting with full intention? You might discover that your habit of checking news first thing in the morning seeds anxiety for your day, and a more intentional choice would be 5 minutes of quiet reflection. You might realize that listening to an educational podcast on your commute leaves you feeling more enriched than the same playlist you've heard 100 times. This act of examination is how you slowly take back the reins of your life from autopilot and start driving with purpose. Each intentional choice, no matter how small, is a declaration of self-trust. It is a quiet promise you make to yourself that your life will be lived by your own design. Nothing lasts, and that's why every decision matters. This seemingly paradoxical truth is the heart of the 14th Stoic principle, embracing impermanence. The Stoics didn't see the transient nature of life as a cause for despair, but as the very source of its meaning and our courage. they practiced a constant, gentle awareness known as Memento Mori, remembering that we and everyone we love will one day die. This wasn't a morbid obsession with the end. It was a profound tool for clarifying what is truly important in the present. When we deeply internalize that our time, our possessions, our relationships, and even our own identities are in a constant state of flux, a powerful shift occurs. Our attachment to specific, rigid outcomes begins to loosen. The fear of making a wrong decision, of taking a risk that might fail, starts to lose its grip on us. Why? Because we understand that all outcomes, whether we label them success or failure, are temporary. This realization doesn't lead to apathy. It generates a tremendous sense of freedom and urgency. It allows us to act not from a place of fear, but from a place of purpose, knowing that the only real mistake is to let precious, fleeting time slip through our fingers in a state of hesitant inaction. Marcus Aurelius, who witnessed the constant churn of political power, the fragility of the human body, and the inevitable passing of all things, returned to this theme again and again for his own strength. He wrote in his meditations, "Keep in mind how fast things pass by and are gone, those that are now and those to come. Existence flows past us like a river. The infinite behind us is closed, and the abyss of the future is boundless." In this beautiful, sobering reflection, he isn't just being poetic, he is engaging in a practical mental exercise. He is reminding himself that the glories of the past are already gone, sealed away, and the future is an unfathomable mystery. The only thing that is real, the only thing we truly possess, is this present moment. This awareness is the ultimate antidote to procrastination and perfectionism. It asks us a simple, piercing question. If everything is temporary, what are you waiting for? Consider the story of Sarah, a successful corporate lawyer in her late 40s. On paper, her life was enviable, a high salary, a corner office, the respect of her peers. But for years, she felt a quiet, persistent ache of dissatisfaction. She was living a life built on a foundation of someday she would have enough saved to feel secure. Someday she would have time to pursue her long-dormant passion for painting. Someday she would prioritize her health and her relationships. The turning point came not with a dramatic event, but with a quiet moment of clarity during a long commute. She was listening to an audiobook about Stoicism and heard the concept of Memento Mori. It struck her with the force of a physical blow. She realized she was trading her irreplaceable days for a future that was not guaranteed, postponing her joy and her authenticity for a safety that might never arrive. She saw her own life from the perspective of its end, and the image of a woman who had been brave for everyone but herself was deeply unsettling. This acknowledgement of life's impermanence didn't frighten her, it liberated her. It gave her the courage to make a bold change. She didn't recklessly quit her job, but she began to act with decisive intention. She started dedicating 2 hours each evening to her art, no matter how tired she felt. She downsized her lifestyle to reduce her financial pressure. Within a year, she had transitioned to a part-time legal role and was selling her paintings. The risk of failure was still there, but it was dwarfed by the certain regret of never having tried. She understood that her legal career, her current lifestyle, and even her identity as a painter were all temporary. This wasn't a reason to avoid the decision. It was the very reason to make it. This practice of embracing impermanence is the ultimate tool for cutting through the noise of societal expectations and our own internal fears. It asks us to hold our plans and our possessions lightly, to engage with them fully but without the desperate clutch of attachment. It allows us to make decisions with a lighter heart and a clearer mind, because we know that no single outcome will define us forever. Every ending contains a new beginning, and every loss creates space for something new. To bring this powerful awareness into your own life, take a moment for a quiet thought experiment. Set aside all the practical constraints and the voices of doubt for just a few minutes. Ask yourself this question with complete honesty. What is one bold change, one leap of faith, or one long-delayed dream that you would pursue immediately if you were completely free from the fear of change? Would you start that business? Would you end that draining relationship? Would you move to a new city? Would you finally have that difficult, honest conversation? Don't just note the answer, sit with the feeling of it. That desire, that pull, is a compass pointing you toward a life that is more authentically yours. The Stoic reminder is that change is not the enemy. It is the fundamental nature of existence. Your courage to flow with it, and even to direct it, is what makes your brief, beautiful moment in the river of time truly matter. A grateful mind is a decisive mind. This might seem like a surprising connection at first. What does counting your blessings have to do with making clear, confident choices? For the Stoics, the link was direct and profound. Gratitude is not just a warm, fuzzy feeling. It is a powerful cognitive tool that anchors us firmly in the reality of the present moment. Anxiety and indecision almost always live in the future. They thrive on the unknown, the what if, and the potential for lack. When we are fixated on what we don't have or what might go wrong, our mental energy becomes scattered and our judgment becomes clouded by fear. Gratitude performs a brilliant counter-maneuver. It forcibly redirects our attention to the assets and opportunities that are already here, right now. It grounds us in what is real and available, creating a foundation of contentment from which we can make choices that are not driven by a desperate need to acquire or avoid, but from a place of wholeness and clear-eyed assessment. The Roman philosopher Seneca, a man who experienced both immense wealth and brutal exile, understood that our happiness depends not on our circumstances, but on our perspective toward them. He offered this piercing insight: it is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more that is poor. This gets to the very heart of the Stoic view. Poverty, in its truest sense, is a state of mind, an insatiable hunger for external validation and material possessions that can never be satisfied. Gratitude is the practical cure for this poverty. It is the conscious act of shifting your measurement of wealth from what you desire to what you already possess. This shift doesn't promote complacency. It generates a powerful and secure contentment. When you are content, you are no longer making decisions from a place of perceived lack. You aren't choosing a job purely for a higher salary to fill a void, or pursuing a relationship out of a fear of being alone. Your decisions become purer, more aligned with your true values, because the addictive pull of more has lost its power over you. Imagine how this transforms the daily landscape of your decision-making. Let's say you're feeling stuck in your career, anxious about your future prospects, and unsure of your next step. The indecisive mind, operating from a mindset of scarcity, spirals into worry. It focuses on the promotion you didn't get, the skills you lack, the intimidating success of your peers. This anxiety is paralyzing. It makes any potential path seem fraught with risk and inadequacy. Now apply a rigorous practice of Stoic gratitude. Before you even attempt to plan your next move, you pause and deliberately catalog your present advantages. You are grateful for the stable employment you currently have, which provides for your needs. You are grateful for the specific skills and experience you've already accumulated, which are real and valuable. You are grateful for the mentors you've had and the challenges you've overcome, which have made you resilient. This isn't positive thinking, it's an honest audit of your actual resources. From this grounded place, your perspective on the future shifts. The question is no longer a desperate, "How do I get out of this terrible situation?" but a purposeful, "Given the solid foundation I already have, what is the wisest and most courageous step I can take to grow?" Your decision is now informed by strength, not fear. It becomes actionable because it's built on the concrete reality of the present, not the frightening fiction of an impoverished future. This is a habit that requires cultivation, a mental muscle to be exercised daily. The Stoics didn't wait for a feeling of gratitude to spontaneously arrive. They actively generated it through disciplined reflection. You can incorporate this into your life with a simple, nightly ritual. As your day winds down, take just 60 seconds to mentally identify 3 specific things you are grateful for from the past 24 hours. The key is to be concrete and often simple. It isn't just, "I'm grateful for my family." It's, "I'm grateful for the 5-minute conversation I had with my daughter this morning where we genuinely laughed together." It isn't, "I'm grateful for my health." It's, "I'm grateful that my body felt strong and energized during my walk today." This practice does something remarkable. It trains your brain to scan your environment for evidence of abundance rather than evidence of lack. Over time, this becomes your default setting. You begin to notice small joys and resources you previously overlooked, and this accumulated sense of bounty becomes the emotional and psychological capital from which you make all your decisions. To experience the immediate power of this shift, try it right now. Don't just think about it, actually name, either out loud or in your mind, 3 specific things you are genuinely grateful for in this very moment. It could be the device you're using to learn this information, the comfortable chair you're sitting in, or simply the fact that you have a few quiet minutes to focus on your own growth. Feel how that simple act immediately alters your center of gravity, pulling you out of the anxious future and into the empowered present. This is the grateful mind. And from this grounded, abundant place, decisive action naturally follows. Self-trust means trusting your moral compass above all. This is the essence of the 16th Stoic principle, a quality that separates mere intention from decisive action, moral courage. It's one thing to know what is right in the quiet of your own mind. It is something entirely different to act upon that knowledge when there is a cost, when you risk social rejection, professional setback, or personal discomfort. The Stoics identified courage not as the absence of fear, but as the virtue that enables all the others. Without courage, wisdom remains a private thought. Justice becomes a silent wish, and temperance is an unenforced ideal. Moral courage is the engine that drives virtue into the world. It is the unwavering commitment to act in accordance with your principles, not because it is easy, convenient, or rewarding, but simply because it is right. This is where self-trust is truly tested and ultimately forged. You learn to trust yourself not when things are calm, but when the pressure is on and your character is on the line. Every time you choose principle over popularity, you deposit an immense amount of trust into your own internal bank. The Stoics, living often in politically volatile times, had immense respect for this quality. While many philosophers spoke of courage, figures like Kato the Younger embodied it so completely that he became a legend in his own time. Kato's entire life was a lesson in unwavering principle, and his contemporary, the philosopher Epictetus, would later use him as the ultimate example. Epictetus taught his students, "For it is better to die of hunger but free from distress and fear than to live in plenty amidst tremblings." He was pointing to a profound truth. A life lived in compromise of your core values is a life of quiet terror, a constant internal trembling. The true poverty is not a lack of material things, but a lack of integrity. The courage to stand by your principles, even at great personal cost, is the price of purchasing your own freedom from that internal conflict. It is the ultimate act of self-ownership. When you refuse to be bribed or threatened into betraying what you know to be true, you declare to yourself and the world that your soul is not for sale. This is the foundation of an unassailable self-trust. We can find powerful examples of this moral courage throughout history, but it is perhaps most instructive to consider a modern, everyday scenario. Imagine a mid-level manager in a large corporation who discovers that her department is quietly manipulating sales data to make quarterly results look stronger for shareholders. She knows it's wrong, it's a violation of trust and potentially illegal. The easy, comfortable path is clear: stay silent. Speaking up would mean confronting her own boss, potentially alienating colleagues, and risking her position and career trajectory. The pressure to conform, to not make waves, is immense. The path of moral courage, however, is entirely different. It begins with her internal resolve, her commitment to the virtue of justice. She gathers her evidence meticulously. She then requests a private meeting with her superior and calmly, clearly presents her findings. She does not do this with anger or self-righteousness, but with a firm dedication to what is true and fair. She is prepared for the consequences, the cold shoulder, the demotion, even the termination. But she acts anyway because her trust in her own moral compass is greater than her fear of the outcome. This is Stoic courage in action. It is not a dramatic, reckless charge into battle. It is a quiet, sober, and profoundly brave decision to do the right thing because it is the right thing to do, regardless of the personal cost. This kind of courage is a muscle that must be developed through consistent, small exercises in daily life. It's the courage to return the extra change a cashier accidentally gave you. It's the courage to gently correct a friend who is spreading a harmful rumor. It's the courage to be the only voice in a meeting questioning an unethical shortcut, even when everyone else seems eager to just move on. Each of these small acts strengthens your resolve and deepens your self-trust, preparing you for larger tests when they inevitably arrive. To begin cultivating this essential quality, take a moment for an honest inventory of your own life. Can you identify a recent situation, however small, where you felt an inner nudge to do or say something you knew was right, but you hesitated? Perhaps you witnessed a subtle act of discrimination and said nothing. Maybe you had an opportunity to admit a mistake that would have been easy to hide. Or possibly you chose to laugh at an offensive joke to fit in, rather than respectfully dissent. That moment of hesitation is the exact training ground. Revisit that moment in your mind, not with self-judgment, but with curiosity. What was the specific fear that held you back? Was it the fear of awkwardness, of conflict, of being judged? Simply bringing that fear into the light begins to disarm it. The next time a similar situation arises, that awareness will create a tiny pause, a space where your courage has just enough room to speak a little louder than your fear. That is how you begin to build a character that not only knows the right path but has the unwavering fortitude to walk it. How often does worry about tomorrow rob today of its power? This constant mental time travel into a future that hasn't happened yet is one of the greatest drains on our decisiveness and peace of mind. The 17th Stoic principle tackles this directly by training us to anchor our awareness firmly in the present moment. This isn't about a vague mindfulness trend. It's a rigorous practice of directing your full attention and effort to the task immediately at hand, to the exclusion of all else. The Stoics understood that anxiety and indecision are almost always born from projecting ourselves into an imagined future, playing out scenarios that may never come to pass. This mental fragmentation scatters our energy and clouds our judgment. By corralling our focus back to the here and now, we reclaim a tremendous amount of cognitive bandwidth. The present moment is the only realm where we can actually exercise our control and take meaningful action. It is the fertile ground where decisions are made and executed, not just worried about. Marcus Aurelius, constantly burdened by the weight of leading an empire, had to repeatedly remind himself of this fundamental truth. He wrote in his Meditations, "Don't let your imagination be crushed by life as a whole." Don't try to picture everything bad that could possibly happen. Stick with the situation at hand and ask, why is this so unbearable? Why can't I endure it? You'll be embarrassed to answer. Then he adds another powerful thought. Give yourself a gift, the present moment. This is the core of the practice. We become overwhelmed when we try to carry the entire weight of our lives at once. We see a massive project, a lifelong goal, or a distant deadline, and the sheer scale of it triggers paralysis. The Stoic solution is to break the monolithic future down into a series of manageable present moments. You don't have to solve your entire life today. You only have to engage fully with what is in front of you right now. Consider someone facing a common source of modern indecision, a massive, complex work project with a deadline that feels months away. The untrained mind looks at the mountain of work and immediately becomes overwhelmed. They jump ahead, imagining all the potential pitfalls, the late nights, the possibility of failure. This triggers anxiety, which leads to procrastination. They might open a document, stare at the blank screen, feel a surge of panic, and then quickly distract themselves with email or social media. This cycle repeats, and the project becomes a source of constant low-grade dread. Now, apply the Stoic focus on the present. This person would consciously pull their attention back from the terrifying future of the completed project and into the safety of the immediate present. They would ask themselves not, how will I ever finish this entire thing, but what is the single, smallest, most immediate step I can take right now? The answer might be as simple as, I will spend the next 25 minutes solely researching the first subsection. I will not check my phone. I will not think about the conclusion. My entire world is this one subsection for these 25 minutes. This shift is transformative. The mountain becomes a single, manageable stone. By fully immersing themselves in that one task, they enter a state of flow. The anxiety dissipates because there is no room for it. Their cognitive capacity is entirely occupied by the present action. After 25 minutes, they have created momentum. One stone has been laid. Then they can ask the question again for the next 25 minutes. This is how massive undertakings are completed, not in one heroic, future-oriented leap, but through a series of fully engaged present moments. This practice is about more than just productivity. It's about reclaiming the quality of your life. A mind that is always jumping ahead to tomorrow is a mind that is never truly anywhere. It misses the beauty of a conversation because it's rehearsing what it will say next. It fails to enjoy a meal because it's worrying about a meeting later. To cultivate this vital skill, the Stoics would advise starting small with a deliberate practice of presence. Today, choose one routine activity and decide to perform it with your complete and undivided attention for just 5 minutes. It could be drinking your morning coffee, but instead of scrolling through your phone, you simply drink the coffee. Notice the temperature, the aroma, the taste. It could be walking to your car, but instead of planning your day, you simply notice the feeling of your feet on the ground, the air on your skin, the sounds around you. When your mind inevitably wanders to the past or future, as it is wired to do, gently and without judgment, guide it back to the sensory experience of the present. This is not a test, it's a repetition, like lifting a weight for your focus muscle. Each time you bring your attention back, you are strengthening your ability to be where you are. And it is from this place of calm, focused presence that the clearest and most decisive actions naturally emerge. What if every obstacle, every unexpected detour, and every moment of frustration was not a random error in the universe's code? but a carefully designed lesson for your growth. This is the heart of the 18th Stoic principle, a concept that might be the ultimate test of our trust in the world and in ourselves, accepting Providence. The Stoics didn't see the events of our lives as a series of random accidents. They believed in a rational, interconnected universe where everything unfolds according to a divine, natural order, a concept they called logos. To accept Providence is to trust that there is a reason, even if it is completely hidden from our current view, for everything that occurs. This is not a passive surrender to fate. It is an active, courageous trust that allows us to stop fighting reality and start working with it. When we believe that events are not merely chaotic but are part of a larger, purposeful tapestry, our entire relationship with difficulty transforms. Resistance melts away, and in its place arises a curious, adaptive energy. We stop asking, "Why is this happening to me?" and start asking, "What is this happening for me? What is it teaching me? How is it forcing me to grow in a way I never would have chosen for myself?" The great teacher Epictetus, who himself was born into slavery and endured a lifetime of physical lameness, framed this acceptance not as a burden, but as the key to a harmonious life. He advised, "Do not seek for things to happen the way you want them to. Rather, wish that what happens happen the way it happens, then you will be happy." This is perhaps one of the most challenging and liberating ideas in all of Stoicism. It is the ultimate application of the dichotomy of control. We are to release our white-knuckled grip on our specific, desired outcomes and instead align our desires with reality itself. This doesn't mean we don't have preferences or that we don't work toward goals. It means that we hold those goals lightly, and when reality presents us with a different path, we meet it not with rage and disappointment, but with a willing curiosity. We trust that the universe's plan for our character might be more insightful than our own plan for our comfort. This perspective is the ultimate antidote to victimhood. It empowers us to see ourselves not as pawns being knocked about by misfortune, but as active participants in a story where even the challenges are meaningful. Imagine a modern professional, let's call him David, who has poured his heart and savings into launching a new tech startup. He has a brilliant product, a dedicated team, and for 2 years, everything seems to be building toward a successful launch. Then, a global economic shift causes his primary investors to pull their funding at the last minute. The company collapses. From a conventional perspective, this is an unmitigated disaster, a massive failure and a devastating personal and financial blow. The untrained mind might fall into a pit of despair, self-recrimination, and bitterness, seeing the event as a cruel twist of fate that ruined his life. Now apply the lens of Stoic providence. David allows himself to feel the grief and disappointment, but he does not get stuck there. He begins to consciously look for the reason. He asks the Stoic question, if this is part of a larger design, what could it be for? In the quiet months that follow, as he picks up the pieces, he starts to see the answers. The intense pressure of the startup had taken a severe toll on his health and his most important relationships. The collapse, while painful, forcibly freed him from an unsustainable grind. Furthermore, the specific skills he honed while building his company, a deep understanding of a niche market and a talent for agile problem-solving, are suddenly in high demand elsewhere. A former competitor, impressed by his resilience, offers him a senior role with a better salary and a healthier work-life balance. The collapse of his dream company becomes the very event that leads him to a more stable, fulfilling, and balanced career. The obstacle, the loss of funding, was not the end of his path. It was the universe's drastic but effective way of rerouting him onto a better one. He couldn't see the destination while he was being rerouted. He could only trust that the road was leading somewhere meaningful. This practice of reframing is a conscious choice to seek the potential benefit hidden within the difficulty. It requires us to exercise our rational faculty to its fullest, to look beyond the immediate emotional shock and search for the longer arc of our development. To begin weaving this powerful principle into the fabric of your own thinking, bring to mind a recent setback or difficulty you've experienced. It doesn't have to be a major life event. It could be a project that failed, a plan that was cancelled, or even a frustrating argument. Now challenge yourself to perform a simple but profound mental exercise. Ask yourself, if I were to assume that this happened for a reason that ultimately serves my growth, what could that reason be? Perhaps that cancelled plan forced you to have a restful evening that your body desperately needed, preventing you from getting sick. Maybe that argument revealed a fundamental value difference you needed to see in a relationship, allowing you to address it or move on. That project failure might have taught you a crucial technical skill or a lesson in humility that will prevent a much larger mistake in the future. By actively searching for the potential benefit, you are not denying the pain of the experience. You are simply choosing to place your trust in a universe that is conspiring for your evolution, not against your comfort. You are deciding to see every event, especially the difficult ones, as your personal, customized curriculum for building an unshakable character. Clutter, mental or physical, breeds indecision. This might seem like a modern problem, the product of our hyper-connected, consumer-driven world, but the Stoics identified this drain on our clarity centuries ago. They understood that a life burdened by excess, whether it's too many possessions, too many commitments, or too many mental distractions, creates a constant, low-level static that interferes with our ability to think clearly and choose wisely. Every unnecessary object on your desk, every trivial appointment on your calendar, and every nagging worry in the back of your mind represents a tiny claim on your attention, a small withdrawal from your finite reservoir of focus and decision-making energy. The Stoic practice of simplicity is the deliberate act of clearing away this static, of stripping life down to its essential components so that your mind, freed from the burden of managing the unimportant, can operate with laser-like precision on what truly matters. It is about creating the internal and external space necessary for virtue and reason to flourish. Seneca, who moved in the highest circles of Roman power and witnessed immense luxury, was a powerful advocate for this pared-down way of living. He saw firsthand how complexity and wealth could become a prison of anxiety and obligation. In one of his letters, he cuts to the heart of the matter, writing, "It is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more that is poor." He expands on this, arguing that a simple life is not defined by deprivation, but by freedom from the endless desire for more, freedom from the fear of loss, and freedom from the exhausting labor required to maintain a facade of status. For Seneca, simplicity was the path to self-sufficiency. When your needs are few and your desires are held in check by reason, you are no longer at the mercy of fortune's whims. Your happiness and your capacity for sound judgment are no longer tied to external things that can be taken away. This creates a profound sense of inner stability, a quiet confidence that you have everything you need within you to handle whatever life brings. This is the ultimate clarity from which decisive action springs. We can see the practical power of this principle in the most mundane aspects of our daily routines. Consider the concept of decision fatigue. Every single day, you are faced with thousands of micro-decisions, from what to wear and what to eat for breakfast to which task to tackle first and how to respond to an email. Each of these choices, however small, consumes a little bit of your cognitive energy. By the time you face a truly important decision later in the day, a strategic business choice, a difficult conversation with a loved one, your mental reserves are already depleted, making you more susceptible to impulsivity, avoidance, or poor judgment. This is where Stoic simplicity becomes a tactical advantage. By intentionally minimizing the number of trivial decisions you have to make, you conserve that precious energy for the choices that actually define your character and your life. This is why figures like Steve Jobs famously wore the same outfit every day, a black turtleneck and jeans. It wasn't a fashion statement, it was a decision-making hack. By eliminating one entire category of daily choice, he preserved his mental focus for the monumental creative and business decisions that required his full attention. You don't need to adopt a uniform to apply this wisdom. Start by auditing one small area of your life that feels unnecessarily complex. Perhaps it's your morning routine. Does it involve deliberating over a closet full of clothes you rarely wear? Could you create a simple, go-to weekly menu to eliminate the daily, what's for dinner debate? Maybe it's your digital life. Could you organize your computer files into a simpler system, unsubscribe from distracting newsletters you never read, or turn off non-essential notifications on your phone? The goal isn't to create a life of boring monotony, but to deliberately design your environment to support your focus rather than fracture it. Each item you remove, each commitment you gracefully decline, and each distraction you silence is a vote for a clearer mind and a more intentional life. This process of simplification is an active declaration of what you value most. It is the practice of saying no to the trivial many so you can say a full-hearted yes to the essential few. To begin this practice of reclamation, take an honest look at your upcoming week. Identify one single area, your physical workspace, your daily schedule, your diet, your entertainment choices, that feels cluttered or unnecessarily complicated. What is one concrete action you could take to simplify it? It might be a 10-minute decluttering of your desk, blocking out 2 hours for deep work without interruptions, or planning your meals in advance. This small act of simplification is not just about organizing your stuff or your time. It is a direct investment in your future clarity and your capacity to act with decisive purpose when it matters most. The obstacle is not in the way, it is the way. This is perhaps one of the most radical and empowering ideas that Stoicism offers us. It completely reframes our relationship with difficulty, transforming it from something to be avoided at all costs into the very raw material for building an unshakable character. The Stoics didn't just believe we should endure adversity. They believed we should actively welcome it, not with a sense of martyrdom, but with a keen understanding that a life without challenges is a life without the opportunity to discover our own true strength. Think of it like this: a sword is not forged in a vacuum. It is thrust into the fire, hammered on the anvil, and plunged into cold water. This process is violent, intense, and stressful for the metal, but it is also the only way to transform a soft, useless piece of ore into a blade that can hold a razor's edge and withstand tremendous force. Adversity is the fire and the hammer for the human spirit. It is the necessary friction that grinds away our weaknesses and polishes our resilience. Every time we navigate a challenge successfully, we aren't just solving a problem. We are depositing concrete evidence into our own mental bank account. We are creating a personal history of overcoming, and that history becomes the foundation of a deep, earned self-trust. We start to know, with a certainty that goes beyond mere positive thinking, that we can handle far more than we ever believed possible. Marcus Aurelius, who faced relentless political intrigue, the constant threat of war, and immense personal loss, constantly turned to this principle for his own fortitude. He wrote in his private meditations, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." This is the perfect crystallization of the idea. He isn't saying the obstacle disappears or becomes easy. He is saying that the very presence of the obstacle is what creates the path forward. Your reaction to the impediment is the action that matters. Your creative response to a barrier is the progress. When you hit a wall, you are presented with a choice. You can sit down and lament the wall's existence, or you can begin to look for handholds, use it to build something new, or simply learn to climb. The obstacle forces you to develop skills, patience, and creativity you would never have developed on an open, easy road. It demands more from you, and in doing so, it reveals more of you to yourself. This is how obstacles become the way. They are not detours from your path. They are an essential part of the path itself, designed to make you equal to the journey ahead. History provides a profound example of this principle in action with the story of Seneca's exile. Seneca the Younger was a renowned philosopher, playwright, and statesman who found himself at the peak of Roman society as an advisor to Emperor Nero. But in the year 41, he was suddenly accused of adultery with the emperor's niece, a charge widely believed to be politically motivated, and was sentenced to exile on the island of Corsica. For a man of his status and intellectual refinement, this was a catastrophic fall from grace. Corsica was then a remote, rugged, and uncivilized outpost. He was stripped of his wealth, his influence, his vibrant social life in Rome, and everything that defined his identity. It would have been easy, even expected, for him to collapse into despair, to rage against the injustice, and to wither away in self-pity. But Seneca chose a different path. He saw his exile not as an end, but as a unique and brutal curriculum presented to him by fortune. He used his isolation not to lament, but to deepen his philosophical practice. He immersed himself in study and writing, producing some of his most enduring works, including consolations to his mother and friends. He practiced the Stoic principles he preached, focusing intensely on what he could control, his attitude, his use of time, his inner world, and accepting what he could not. Exile became his greatest teacher. It stripped away all the external trappings of his life and forced him to confront the core of his own being. When he was eventually recalled to Rome nearly 8 years later, he didn't return broken. He returned stronger, wiser, and with a clarity and resilience that would allow him to navigate the even more treacherous waters of Nero's court for another decade. The obstacle of exile didn't break him, it forged him. It became the way to a deeper understanding of himself and his philosophy. This transformative power of adversity isn't reserved for ancient philosophers. It plays out in our own lives in ways both large and small. Consider a more modern, relatable challenge: recovering from a serious injury. An athlete who tears a crucial ligament faces a devastating obstacle. Their career, their passion, and their physical identity are suddenly put on hold. The months of rehabilitation are painful, frustrating, and monotonous, but within that struggle lies the opportunity for immense growth. They learn a level of patience they never knew they possessed. They develop a much deeper appreciation for the intricate workings of their own body. They might discover mental fortitude and focus that translates into every other area of their life. The obstacle of the injury forces them to become a more complete, resilient, and mentally tough athlete than they were before. The injury, as terrible as it is, becomes the way to a higher level of performance and self-awareness. It's in the navigating of the difficulty that the growth occurs. The struggle itself is the training. To truly integrate this powerful shift in perspective, take a moment to look back on your own life journey. Can you identify a past challenge, a significant setback, or a period of difficulty that, in retrospect, actually made you stronger? Perhaps it was a job loss that pushed you to finally start the business you'd always dreamed of. Maybe it was the end of a relationship that, though painful, taught you crucial lessons about your own needs and boundaries. It could even be a childhood struggle that instilled in you a sense of independence and resourcefulness. Try to view that event not as a random bad thing that happened to you, but as a necessary part of your development. What specific strength did you gain from navigating that challenge? How did it shape the person you are today? Recognizing that your past resilience is proof of your inherent strength is the first step toward welcoming future obstacles not with dread, but with a quiet confidence that whatever comes, it too will become part of your way forward. Does your decision contribute to something larger than yourself? This question is the gateway to the 21st and perhaps most expansive Stoic principle, aligning your choices with the common good. Up to this point, our focus has been largely internal, on building self-trust through personal discipline, rational examination, and emotional resilience. But Stoicism is not a philosophy of isolation, it is a philosophy of connection. The ancient Stoics believed that we are fundamentally social creatures, intricately woven into a vast web of humanity. They saw the universe as a single, living organism, and each individual person as a vital part of that whole, what Marcus Aurelius called a limb of the body of mankind. To act against the welfare of others, therefore, is not just a moral failing, it is a form of self-harm, a disconnection from our own nature. When we make decisions that are consciously designed to benefit the wider community, we tap into a profound source of purpose. This sense of purpose, in turn, becomes a powerful antidote to self-doubt. Hesitation often springs from a narrow focus on the self. What if I look foolish? What if I fail? What's in it for me? But when the question shifts to what action best serves the common good, the path forward often becomes astonishingly clear. The weight of personal anxiety is lifted and replaced by the steadier, more reliable compass of virtue. Marcus Aurelius constantly reminded himself of this interconnected reality to guide his actions as emperor. He wrote, "What brings no benefit to the hive brings none to the bee." This simple, beautiful analogy captures the essence of the principle. The bee cannot thrive if the hive is sick or failing. Its individual well-being is inextricably linked to the health of the entire colony. In the same way, our personal success and fulfillment are deeply tied to the welfare of our families, our communities, and our society. A decision made purely for selfish, short-term gain might seem like a victory for the individual bee, but if it damages the hive by eroding trust, exploiting others, or harming the environment, that victory is ultimately an illusion. The negative consequences will inevitably circle back, creating a world of suspicion and scarcity that harms everyone, including the initial beneficiary. Conversely, an action that strengthens the hive, that builds trust, fosters fairness, and creates abundance, creates a rising tide that lifts all boats, including our own. This understanding doesn't just make us better citizens, it makes us more decisive individuals. We are no longer paralyzed by a narrow calculation of personal risk and reward. We are empowered by a larger mission. Consider the modern-day scenario of a business leader facing a classic ethical dilemma. Her company is under significant pressure from shareholders to deliver strong quarterly profits. An opportunity arises to cut costs dramatically by outsourcing production to a factory in a country with notoriously lax labor and environmental standards. The short-term financial benefit is undeniable and would likely be rewarded with bonuses and a rising stock price. The easy, self-interested decision is clear. But this leader has practiced Stoicism. She pauses and applies this principle of the common good. She broadens her perspective far beyond the quarterly report. She considers the employees in her own community whose jobs would be lost. She contemplates the workers in the overseas factory who would be subjected to poor working conditions for meager pay. She reflects on the environmental damage that might be caused and the broader message it sends about her company's values. She then weighs this against the alternative, perhaps keeping production local with a smaller profit margin, but investing in employee well-being and sustainable practices. The second option is harder in the short term and may draw criticism from some investors, but it is aligned with justice and her duty to the wider community. It strengthens the hive. From this vantage point, the morally correct choice becomes the only logical choice. The self-doubt that might have accompanied a selfish decision, the nagging voice of a compromised conscience, is silenced. It is replaced by the quiet confidence that comes from knowing her action contributed to a world she is proud to help build. Her trust in herself grows because she knows she can be counted on to do the right thing, even when it's difficult. This principle invites us to become architects of a better world through our daily micro-decisions, not just our grand gestures. It asks us to expand our circle of concern beyond our immediate self-interest. To truly integrate this into your life, take a moment to reflect on a decision you are currently weighing, whether it's large or small. It could be a professional choice, a family matter, or even how you interact with a stranger. Now consciously widen the lens. Ask yourself not only what is best for me, but also, how will this choice impact my family, my colleagues, my community, or even future generations? Does this action add a small measure of trust, kindness, and fairness to the world, or does it take it away? This simple act of ethical expansion does something remarkable. It connects your personal journey to a universal story of human progress. It transforms your life from a solitary quest for personal gain into a collaborative masterpiece of shared flourishing. And in doing so, it provides the most powerful and enduring foundation for self-trust imaginable, the knowledge that your life is a force for good. To be decisive is to be willing to be wrong. This may sound counterintuitive in a world that often prizes flawless execution and perfect outcomes, but it lies at the very heart of the final Stoic principle for building self-trust. The Stoics understood that the relentless pursuit of perfection is not a path to excellence. It is a prison of anxiety and hesitation. It is a refusal to accept the fundamental nature of being human, a nature that is inherently fallible, prone to error, and designed to learn through experience. Embracing imperfection is not about lowering your standards or celebrating failure. It is about radically redefining what success means. True success, from a Stoic perspective, is not the absence of mistakes, but the presence of courage, the commitment to learning, and the resilience to continue acting virtuously even when your actions don't yield the perfect result you envisioned. This mindset is the ultimate liberation from the fear that paralyzes decision-making. When you grant yourself permission to be imperfect, you are freed to act. You begin to trust not that you will always be right, but that you will always be able to handle the outcome, extract the lesson, and adapt your course accordingly. Your self-trust is no longer contingent on an impossible standard of infallibility. It is rooted in the unshakable knowledge of your own capacity to grow. Seneca, who wrote extensively on the themes of human frailty and progress, offered a powerful perspective on this process. He observed, "Even if we are not yet wise, we can love wisdom and strive to follow her." We can make progress, and this is the greatest comfort, to be moving forward even if the goal is still far off. He expands on this, reminding us that the path to wisdom is paved with missteps, and that to expect otherwise is to misunderstand the very nature of learning. For Seneca, the value was in the striving itself, in the conscious effort to align with virtue, even when we occasionally miss the mark. This is the essence of embracing imperfection. It is the recognition that every error is not a verdict on your character, but a single data point in the lifelong experiment of living well. It is feedback, not failure. When you internalize this, the stakes of every decision lower just enough for you to think clearly. The question shifts from, "What if I make a mistake?" to the far more productive, "What can I learn from whatever outcome emerges?" Consider the story of Maya, an aspiring software developer with a brilliant idea for a new application. She spends months perfecting her business plan, researching the market, and learning every possible coding language she might need. Her desire to launch a flawless product is so strong that she becomes trapped in a cycle of endless preparation. She's terrified of releasing something that might have a bug, receive negative user feedback, or fail to attract investors. This fear of imperfection keeps her in a state of permanent readiness, never actually launching. Then she encounters the Stoic concept of embracing imperfection. She realizes that her quest for a perfect launch is itself the greatest obstacle. She decides to adopt a new mindset. She will release a minimum viable product, a simple, functional version of her app with just the core features. She accepts that it will be imperfect, that users will find problems, and that she will make mistakes. This acceptance is not resignation. It is a strategic decision to learn in the real world rather than in the isolation of her own mind. She launches. Sure enough, the first reviews point out several bugs and suggest key features she hadn't considered. Instead of seeing this as a catastrophic failure, she sees it as invaluable, real-time data. She thanks the users for their feedback, diligently works to fix the issues, and iterates on her design. Within a few months, her app is far stronger and more user-friendly than the perfect version she had originally imagined in her head. Her initial, imperfect decision to launch was in fact the most perfect decision she could have made, because it set her on a path of rapid, practical learning and adaptation. Her willingness to be wrong was the very thing that made her right. This principle invites us to reframe our entire relationship with error. We often treat mistakes like stains to be hidden or scars to be ashamed of. The Stoic approach is to treat them like maps, valuable guides that show us where the pitfalls are and how to navigate more skillfully next time. Your past missteps are not evidence of your unreliability. They are the training ground where your judgment was sharpened and your resilience was forged. To truly integrate this final piece of the self-trust puzzle, take a moment to look back on your own journey with a Stoic's compassionate curiosity. Can you identify one specific past mistake that, upon reflection, taught you an invaluable lesson that you still carry with you today? Perhaps it was a financial misjudgment that taught you the true meaning of value and budgeting. Maybe it was a poorly chosen word in a heated argument that taught you the power of pausing before you speak. It could even be a professional oversight that forced you to develop a more rigorous system for double-checking your work. Instead of brushing past that memory with a cringe, bring it into the light and acknowledge it not as a failure, but as a teacher. What specific strength or piece of wisdom did that error impart? Honoring the lesson is how you complete the cycle. It is how you transform every stumble into a step forward and solidify the trust in yourself that says, no matter what happens, I can learn from it, I can adapt, and I will continue to grow. And so we arrive at the end of our exploration, having journeyed through the 22 internal mechanics that form the Stoic framework for unshakable self-trust and decisive action. We began by learning to see events objectively through the discipline of perception, understanding that our judgments, not the events themselves, shape our reality. We then mastered the crucial art of distinguishing between what is within our power and what is not through the dichotomy of control, freeing up immense mental energy previously wasted on the uncontrollable. We built our foundation on the four cardinal virtues: wisdom, courage, justice and temperance, discovering that a character aligned with principle is the most reliable compass for any decision. We courageously embraced voluntary discomfort to inoculate ourselves against life's inevitable hardships, and practiced negative visualization to disarm our fears of the future by preparing for any outcome. We learned to live in accordance with nature, accepting reality rather than resisting it, and to insert a thoughtful pause between stimulus and response, creating the space where reason can prevail over impulse. Through daily self-examination, we became honest witnesses to our own lives, and by detaching from external outcomes, we found the courage to act based on our efforts alone, not on unpredictable results. We cultivated the still waters of equanimity, remaining undisturbed by life's constant ripples, and took command as the gatekeeper of our own mind through the conscious power of assent. We recognized time as our most precious, non-renewable resource, and we began to act with intentionality, ensuring our choices were truly our own and not merely reactions to external pressure. By embracing the impermanent nature of all things, we found the courage to act despite the fear of change, and through a consistent practice of gratitude, we grounded ourselves in the abundant present, freeing our decisions from the anxiety of perceived lack. We developed the moral courage to stand by our principles, even when it was difficult, and we anchored our awareness firmly in the present moment, the only place where we can truly take action. We learned to accept Providence, trusting that obstacles are not in our way but are the way itself, and we practiced simplicity to clear away the mental and physical clutter that breeds indecision. We discovered that adversity is the necessary fire that forges resilience, and we expanded our circle of concern to align our choices with the common good, finding deeper purpose in our actions. Finally, we embraced our own imperfection, understanding that the willingness to be wrong is the price of entry for a life of bold and decisive learning. This is not a philosophy locked in the past. It is a profoundly practical and accessible operating system for the modern mind. Each of these 22 principles is a tool you can pick up and use today, right now, in the midst of your busy, demanding life. They don't require special equipment or a quiet retreat. They require only your willingness to pay attention and to choose differently. To close, let's reflect on the words of Epictetus, who perhaps said it best: "No man is free who is not master of himself." Self-mastery is not about controlling the world around you. It is about commanding your own perceptions, your own judgments, and your own actions. This is the ultimate source of the self-trust we've been exploring. It is the freedom that comes from knowing that no matter what life brings, you possess an internal citadel of strength, reason, and virtue that cannot be shaken. This journey doesn't end here. True integration begins with practice. I want to invite you to choose just one of these 22 principles, whichever one resonated most deeply with you, and make a commitment to yourself to practice it consciously for the next 7 days. It could be the thoughtful pause before you react, a nightly session of self-examination, or simply practicing gratitude each morning. Then I would love to hear about your experience. Come down to the comments and share which principle you chose and what you discovered. Your insights not only help you solidify your own learning, but can inspire and guide others in this community. If you found this exploration valuable, consider subscribing to the channel and turning on notifications. We have many more journeys into Stoic wisdom and practical philosophy planned, all designed to help you live a life of greater clarity, purpose, and peace. Thank you for watching, and remember, the power to build an unshakable trust in yourself has been within you all